Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 1st Canto, Chapter 17, Verse 3. Gam cha dharma dugham dinam, Vrisham Shudra Pahahatam, Vivatsam Ashruvadanam, Kshamam Yavasamichatim, Gam cha dharma dugham dinam, Vrisham Shudra Pahahatam, Vivatsam Ashruvadanam, Kshamam Yavasamichatim, Gam cha dharma dugham dinam, Vrisham Shudra Padahatam, Vivatsam Ashruvadanam, Kshamam Yavasamichatim. Gam, the cow. Cha, also. Dharma dugham, beneficial because one can draw religion from her. Dinam, now rendered poor. Vrisham, distressed. Shudra, the lower caste. Pada ahatam, beaten on the legs. Vivatsam, without any calf. Ashru vadanam, with tears in her eyes. Kshamam, very weak. Yavasam, grass. Ichatim, as if desiring to have some grass to eat. Translation. Although the cow is beneficial because one can draw religious principles from her, she was now rendered poor and calfless. Her legs were being beaten by a Shudra. There were tears in her eyes, and she was distressed and weak. She was hankering after some grass in the field. Purport. The next symptom of the age of Kali is the distressed condition of the cow. Milking the cow means drawing the principles of religion in a liquid form. The great rishis and munis would live only on milk. Srila Shukadev Goswami would go to a householder while he was milking a cow, and he would simply take a little quantity of it for subsistence. Even 50 years ago, no one would deprive a sadhu of a quart or two of milk, and every householder would give milk like water. For a Sanatanist, a follower of Vedic principles, it is the duty of every householder to have cows and bulls as household paraphernalia, not only for drinking milk, but also for deriving religious principles. The Sanatanist worships cows on religious principles and respects Brahmanas. The cow's milk is required for the sacrificial fire, and by performing sacrifices, the householder can be happy. The cow's calf is not only beautiful to look at, but also gives satisfaction to the cow, and so she delivers as much milk as possible. But in the Kali Yuga, the calves are separated from the cows as early as possible, for purposes which may not be mentioned in these pages of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The cow stands with tears in her eyes. The Shudra milkman draws milk from the cow artificially, and when there is no milk, the cow is sent to be slaughtered. These greatly sinful acts are responsible for all the troubles in present society. People do not know what they are doing in the name of economic development. The influence of Kali will keep them in the darkness of ignorance. Despite all endeavors for peace and prosperity, they must try to see the cows and bulls happy in all respects. Foolish people do not know how one earns happiness by making the cows and bulls happy, but it is a fact by the law of nature. Let us take it from the authority of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and adopt the principles for the total happiness of humanity. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamane Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tardine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vṛnda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Although the cow is beneficial because one can draw religious principles from her, she was now rendered poor and calfless. Her legs were being beaten by a Shudra. There were tears in her eyes, and she was distressed and weak. She was hankering after some grass in the field. So this is a verse of Bhagavatam that immediately evokes a deep sense of sorrow and compassion within the listener. It's a very simple description. We don't get a detailed or a graphic picture of the scene, but it gives us enough to understand the situation and to imagine within the mind what is going on and the suffering of the cow, in this case Bhumi, but also representative of cows in Kali Yuga as a whole. And we can even see in the Sanskrit itself that the Sanskrit is composed in such a way as to be soft and drawn out. There's no sharp changes of consonants or sharp vowels. Everything is very long and drawn out and soft. And this actually in Sanskrit poetical composition is a technique that is used to evoke a sense of karuna, of mercy and compassion in the hearer. So we can see many different levels of expression going on in this verse of Bhagavatam, and we can also derive many different levels of meaning and understanding and lessons from this verse of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. As Srila Prabhupada points out throughout his purport of this verse is highlighting to us a sharp contrast between the ideals of a life of dharma and the state of humanity in the midst of Kali Yuga. Here in our modern day Kali Yuga, the principle of economic development is dharma. People consider economic development, making profit, expanding the production of a nation for the sake of increasing trade and gathering resources or diplomatic agreements from other places in order to increase economic development. This is the dharma of Kali Yuga. People feel that they are justified in taking any course of action for the sake of engaging in this principle of economic development. And indeed, we see that for the sake of economic development, people are willing to even close off their mind from the most obvious of detriments to the actions that they are taking. For instance, in the case of the development of data centers throughout the United States and the world, especially the United States, we see that this is going to have a devastating effect on the environment. It's going to have a devastating effect on the workforce going forward. In the Industrial Revolution, there was this ideal of the means of production increasing to the extent that less work is required in order to fulfill the needs of humanity, and therefore people in general will have a higher standard of life. But instead we actually see the very opposite, that people have developed a lower standard of life in the name of economic growth. I think, at least in my opinion, it's clear to see that at least in cases where they had society arranged with proper, medical care and so on and so forth, that before the Industrial Revolution, people lived a higher quality of life, a much more peaceful life. Especially, I think, if you look at a society like ancient Rome, they didn't have any industrial enterprises per se, but they actually lived a very high standard of life, as good as we do now, if not better. I would argue better. And so practically we can see this, that people are willing to throw away all of their interests in the name of economic development. Same with moral codes. In Christianity, one of the main tenets of the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill, but the modern interpretation is thou shalt not kill unless you'll make money from doing so. And therefore people feel completely justified. In the name of Christianity, in the name of Christian nationalism, they go and indiscriminately kill all kinds of people. Like in Iran, US gained literally nothing from all of its endeavors in Iran, except making more enemies or reinforcing people's ideas of why they were already enemies with the US. Actually, it caused a big disruption to the economic situation. But because of this twisted sense of dharma, twisted sense of ideals in Kali Yuga, therefore, people are not able to come to rational decisions about what are the right courses of action to take. And this is all symptomatic of the age of Kali in which we live. On the other hand, real religious principles, within real religious principles, we find that the cow is dharma dukham, as is stated in this verse. This means that religious principles are derived through the cow's milk. So how is this so? Well, first of all, we can see that milk is the ideal food for the nourishment of humanity. It has perfect nutrients, it stimulates brain health, and it can be made into endless varieties of foodstuffs to offer with love to Kṛṣṇa. And also, as Prabhupada pointed out, it can be given in charity to sadhus. If the householders are engaging in proper cow protection, as was traditionally the case. Of course, in the city, it's a little difficult to do that. Here in San Francisco, I don't know exactly where in this building we would be able to keep a cow. I don't know that that's realistic. But traditionally, in Vedic society, in which people lived a more mode of goodness and reasonable lifestyle, and society was organized in a more reasonable and mode of goodness way, then this was an essential religious duty for householders that, practically speaking, all householders could fulfill. I don't know that it's the case that every householder had cows. Such generalizations I tend to be a little skeptical of, but as a general principle, we find this in the Vedic literature, that the householders are meant to engage in cow protection. And as Prabhupada pointed out, this provides a perfect opportunity for the householder to be able to give in charity to the sadhus. The sadhus are benefited because they're nourished by the milk, and the householders are benefited by giving in charity and also by having the association of the sadhus. Another way that milk is liquid dharma is in the form of yogurt. Yogurt also is very nourishing for the health of the body. It nourishes the gut bacteria, which contributes to mental health and overall well-being. And it stays good for a long time. Doesn't require refrigeration to stay good. You can put it in a clay pot and it'll naturally be regulated in temperature to a cool temperature if it's like an unfinished clay pot, so the moisture can seep out. That's like a natural form of refrigeration. And yogurt can also be made into so many different foodstuffs to lovingly offer to Kṛṣṇa. You can let all of the whey seep out, and then you get this very thick, almost like cheese. You can make Śrīkhand, so many different things to offer to Kṛṣṇa. In the 10th canto, we hear 14th chapter, we hear a description given by Lord Brahma when he, after he stole the calves and cows and cowherd boys, and then Kṛṣṇa revealed to him that Kṛṣṇa is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one of the first verses we see in the prayers of Lord Brahma is describing Kṛṣṇa as a young cowherd boy who's holding rice and yogurt in one hand and a lotus flower in the other hand. A very beautiful and intimate picture. So this yogurt and milk are kind of integral to the pastimes of Kṛṣṇa. So much of Kṛṣṇa's pastimes center around yogurt and milk. And further in the class, we will very much explore that topic. And then also, we have ghee is also vital for dharma. Why? Because you need ghee to perform fire sacrifices. And traditionally, performance of fire sacrifices is an essential religious process for especially householders and brahmanas. In the 11th canto, we get a description of the process of deity worship given by Kṛṣṇa to Uddhava, and Kṛṣṇa describes very briefly how one should perform fire sacrifice as an element of home deity worship. So we can see practically all of these essential ingredients of religious life according to Sanatana Dharma, meaning dharma aligned with sattva guna and aimed at Shuddha sattva. All these ingredients of dharma are coming directly from the cow's milk. And as Srila Prabhupada points out, the milk from a cow is an expression of love. It's an expression of love for the calf, the cow loving the calf, and it's also an expression of love for the human caretaker. And when Radhanath Swami was here recently, he talked about this, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe I heard him say it somewhere else. But he talked about his own experience with milking a cow at one point. And it wasn't until he had developed a relationship with the cow that he was actually able to milk the cow, for the cow to accept that occupation of his. So we find an illustration of this principle in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 10th canto, chapter 13, verse 24, in which it is described how, in this case, it was Kṛṣṇa had expanded himself as the calves and cowherd boys. But we get a general idea of what was going on in Vṛndāvana at the time. It's described how after Kṛṣṇa returned from the forest of Vṛndāvana, then it says, thereafter all the cows entered their different sheds and began mooing loudly, calling for their respective calves. When the calves arrived, the mothers began licking the calves' bodies again and again, and profusely feeding them with the milk flowing from their milk bags. So this love between cow and calf and between cow and human is something that naturally arises in a properly situated human society. It's not something that has to be artificially imposed on people. It's not that, well, if you spend enough time with cows, then you'll, be able to develop affection or if you like cram these like religious dogma into your head, then you'll see the beauty of a cow. Now, if you're actually have any level of motive goodness, then you can see the beauty of the cow, as Prabhupada said in his purport. On the other hand, in our modern society, we get quite the opposite picture of this dharmic picture of what cow protection means, or Kṛṣṇa's example of cow protection. Instead of cows being lovingly cared for and there being loving reciprocation between the cows and the calves and the cows and the human beings, instead, in modern times, we see that cows are often kept in conditions much smaller than they need to feel comfortable and happy, in dirty factory farm conditions, often don't even have grass to step on. They have to be on like concrete flooring, and that causes so many health problems for them, as well as just being very artificial and uncomfortable. The cows are fed artificial foods such as corn, especially in the United States, because corn is subsidized in the name of free market capitalism. The whole corn industry is paid for by the government. And in this way, feeding the corn to the cows grow fat very quickly. And why? So that the cow can be slaughtered. And then meanwhile, while they are keeping the cows in these artificial conditions, while they are milking the cows through artificial means and just waiting for the chance to brutally slaughter the cows. Meanwhile, the calves are being stolen away, and especially the male calves are kept tied up in tiny little bins so that they can't move, and then they are slaughtered at a young age for veal. So this is the horrible demoniac nature of our modern society. But people in modern society, especially in Western cultures like America, think that eating cow flesh is a great luxury, it's a great enjoyment. It's just something that's completely natural and normal for any human being to engage in. And so practically you can see, if you have and spend any time on social media or YouTube, the quantity of food content creators, and what's the thing that gets the most attention and glamour within food content creation. It's eating these big steaks, Wagyu with the marbling of fat, and it's portrayed as just being the best thing ever, but actually it is a horribly ghastly thing to do. Only someone whose consciousness is very covered over by the mode of ignorance would be able to see a slab of meat and not feel any sense of compassion for the living entity from whom that meat came from. Just think like, oh, this is some delicious thing for me to enjoy with my tongue. It's absolutely horrible. And it's completely symptomatic of a culture in which the hearts of people in general are just desensitized to the compassion, to the suffering of others, in which compassion and in which seeing and honoring others equally to oneself, or seeing others even higher than oneself, as Lord Chaitanya recommended in Shikshashtaka, and considering the suffering of others in one's actions, these things don't even cross people's minds. In fact, people think that they're completely justified in causing suffering and distress to others if that achieves some personal goal for them. But it really doesn't take deep thought to see how disregarding the life and suffering of another living entity for one's own temporary little sense enjoyment is a troubling mentality to have. But people completely miss the point in modern society. And in fact, if you try to point out such a thing, then they become very offended. Think, oh, how dare you infringe on my rights to enjoy my tongue by eating flesh. Or even if someone is just vegetarian, but they're not even trying to tell someone else that they should be a vegetarian, people become so offended by this. If you, again, on social media, you see so many examples. And this is symptomatic of humanity's more or less completely missing 3 of the 4 legs of dharma, as has been stated earlier. The 4 principles of dharma in Kali Yuga, we are missing cleanliness, austerity, and non-violence. So cleanliness, we can practically see people, if they even care to take a shower, they think that that's enough for them to be properly situated to go out the door. They don't have any sense of internal cleanliness. They don't have any sense of discriminating between what they expose themselves to, both in terms of physical exposure, what are they putting into their body, what are they putting on their body, what are they keeping around their body, and they don't have any sense of internal cleanliness either, of being discriminating about what kind of content or impressions one allows into the consciousness. In terms of austerity, people think that to enjoy and to be comfortable is the natural right of the human being, and so they think that it's wrong or even immoral to engage in austerity. I remember one time when I was a brahmachari, went out on book distribution, and I ran into this Christian guy who was trying to kind of preach to me, and I was like, oh yeah, my favorite verse in the Bible is when Jesus talks about that because God cares for all living entities, then one should understand that God will care for oneself and thus not be worried about building up so many material facilities and things around oneself. And the man was offended by this. He said, well, how do you know that God doesn't want you to have a house with a picket fence and a grass lawn? It's like, where would you even get that idea from in the first place? Like the Bible doesn't talk about that. But, no sense of austerity, no sense of simple living. In fact, I was listening to a lecture by Bhakti Maharaja yesterday on this verse, and he said that in Kali Yuga, people are so degraded that the highest austerity is simply to not engage in sinful activities. If we just refrain from engaging in sinful activities, then we think, oh, I'm a very austere person. Follow the 4 regulative principles. That's all the 4 regulative principles are. Just don't violate dharma. And people think, oh yes, I'm very austere. But if we see in previous ages, like if you look at the case of Hiranyakashipu, he was standing with his arms upraised for thousands of years, meaning he wasn't eating, he wasn't sleeping, he wasn't mating, he wasn't defending. But we think that I'm following the 4 regulative principles, so I'm real austere. But no, this is the fallen state of Kali Yuga. And non-violence, having compassion for others, completely goes over the heads of people. People enjoy engaging in violent behavior, both physically violent behavior or seeing violent behavior in others, and also in terms of words, how they interact with others. Again, social media is like a prime example of this, that people just go out of their way to cause harm to others, no sense of compassion or trying to understand where someone else is coming from, trying to understand the cares and perspective of another person, to equally see the value of another person as along with themselves. And yes, this is all symptoms of humanity losing its actual human qualities. It actually doesn't take a huge level of awareness or training to see the value of these things. But in modern society, people are so covered over. This is what Kali Yuga is exactly for. I was just finished reading about the disappearance of Kṛṣṇa in the end of the 11th canto and the beginning of the 12th canto. And it's explained that the very reason why did Kṛṣṇa disappear from the earth and why did Kali Yuga commence right after the appearance of Kṛṣṇa, it's because Kali Yuga is a time for people who have a desire to engage in sinful activities, to take birth as human beings. So that way they have the full facilities to engage in sinful activities. In other ages, people don't have full facilities to engage in sinful activities within the human form of life. But in Kali Yuga, there's full opportunity for jivas to do that. So therefore, Kali Yuga is an opportunity for jivas to do that. That's why humanity is the way it is within Kali Yuga. But we also have a great blessing that in this Kali Yuga, just before the beginning of Kali Yuga, Kṛṣṇa was here on the earth. Kṛṣṇa exhibited his pastimes. And so we can hear about these pastimes. We can go to Vṛndāvana and we can see the places of these pastimes. And most astonishingly and wonderfully, Kṛṣṇa came 500 years ago in the form of his devotee, in the mood of Śrīmati Radharani, in the complexion of Śrīmati Radharani, and demonstrated what it means to be a devotee, demonstrated what it means to be absorbed in Kṛṣṇa Lila. And freely gave this out to everyone without discrimination. And so, by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and by the mercy of Kṛṣṇa for exhibiting these pastimes and also giving the mercy by which we can understand these pastimes, then we can have a very unique and wonderful opportunity to not just become established in the principles of dharma, not just become liberated from material life and go to Vaikuntha, but rather we have the opportunity to go to Goloka Vṛndāvana simply by absorbing ourselves in hearing about the qualities and pastimes and names of Kṛṣṇa and forms of Kṛṣṇa, especially Kṛṣṇa in Sri Vṛndāvana Dham. And if we do absorb ourselves in hearing about Kṛṣṇa's pastimes as a cowherd boy in Sri Vṛndāvana Dham, then we get a completely different picture of what life can be like compared to our modern society. We can see a picture of sublime transcendental life in harmony with Kṛṣṇa, and because one is in harmony with Kṛṣṇa, then naturally one becomes in harmony with all others, including all human beings and all cows. And so when Lord Chaitanya saw Jagannath during the Ratha Yatra in Puri, Lord Chaitanya offered a very famous prayer to Jagannath in this regard. Lord Chaitanya said, Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagatitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. So let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Kṛṣṇa, who is the worshipable deity of the Brahminical, who is the well-wisher of cows and brahmanas, and who is always benefiting the whole world. I offer my repeated obeisances to the personality of Godhead, known as Kṛṣṇa and Govinda. So these two qualities, Kṛṣṇa's affection for the brahmanas and his care for the brahmanas, and his affection and care for the cows, are practically speaking something that you will find any time that you encounter any description and glorification of Kṛṣṇa. And this cow protection and cow herding is the backdrop for all of Kṛṣṇa's unlimitedly wonderful loving dealings in sporting play throughout the forest groves of Sri Vṛndāvana Dham. So I thought that I would share some examples of this to give a counterpoint of care for the cows and living in harmony with the cows, having loving exchanges with the cows and all of Sri Vṛndāvana Dham. And then we can reflect as we go about the day, am I seeing these same things as I'm walking the streets of San Francisco? So in the 12th chapter, verses 1 and 2, we hear, "O king, one day Kṛṣṇa decided to take his breakfast as a picnic in the forest. Having risen early in the morning, he blew his bugle made of horn and woke all the cowherd boys and calves with its beautiful sound. Then Kṛṣṇa and the boys, keeping their respective groups of calves before them, proceeded from Vrajabhumi to the forest. At that time, hundreds and thousands of cowherd boys came out of their respective homes in Vrajabhumi and joined Kṛṣṇa, keeping before them their hundreds and thousands of groups of calves. The boys were very beautiful, and they were equipped with lunch bags, bugles, flutes, and sticks for controlling the calves." And then we hear later in the chapter 21 of the 10th canto, the Venu Gita. I chose a selection of 3 verses in which Krishna's relationship with the cows and the animals of Vrindavan in general is described. And so I will recite those and then give the translation. So it goes, spoken by the gopis. Akshanvatam palamidam naparam vidama sakya pashun anuvisheshayator vayasyai vaktram vrajesha sutayor anuvena jushtam yarva nipitam anurakta kataksha moksham tanyasmamudam gatayopi harinya eta yanandanandanamupata vichitra vesham akarnya venuranitam saha Kṛṣṇa sara pujam dadur virachitam pranayavalokai gavascha Kṛṣṇa mukhanir gata venu gita piyusham uttabhita karna putai bibantya shava snutastanapaya kavalasmatastur govindam atmanidrishashru kalas mrishantyaha. So the gopis say, "O friends, those eyes that see the beautiful faces of the sons of Maharaj Nanda are certainly fortunate. As these 2 sons enter the forest, surrounded by their friends, driving the cows before them, they hold their flutes to their mouths and glance lovingly upon the residents of Vṛndavan. For those who have eyes, we think there is no greater object of vision. Blessed are all these foolish deer, because they have approached Maharaj Nanda's son, who is gorgeously dressed and is playing on his flute. Indeed, both the doe and the bucks worship the Lord with looks of love and affection. Using their upraised ears as vessels, the cows are drinking the nectar of the flute song flowing out of Kṛṣṇa's mouth. The calves, their mouths full of milk from their mother's moist nipples, stand still as they take Govinda within themselves through their tear-filled eyes and embrace him within their hearts." So practically we can see such a loving and beautiful picture of Sri Vṛndavan Dham, of Kṛṣṇa's relationship with the cows and their loving exchanges. And actually this is the entire point of Sri Vṛndavan Dham. We see later on in the 13th chapter, it says, "My friends, just see how this riverbank is extremely beautiful because of its pleasing atmosphere. And just see how the blooming lotuses are attracting bees and birds by their aroma. The humming and chirping of the bees and birds is echoing throughout the beautiful trees in the forest. Also, here the sands are clean and soft. Therefore, this must be considered the best place for our sporting and pastimes." So Kṛṣṇa in Vṛndavan is perfectly and ever increasingly reciprocating the loving sentiments and efforts of his dear devotees in endless varieties of loving exchanges. And the whole of Vṛndavan is immersed in this transcendental reciprocation. Everything in Vṛndavan is made for Krishna's pleasure. It's not that it just happens to be that the riverbank is extremely beautiful because of its pleasing atmosphere. It doesn't just happen to be that the blooming lotuses are attracting bees and birds by their aroma. It doesn't just happen to be that the humming and chirping of the bees and birds is echoing throughout the beautiful trees of the forest, or that the sands are clean and soft. This is the arrangement of Krishna's internal potency manifest in Krishna's dearmost devotees, who arrange for Sri Vṛndāvana Dham to be the perfect environment for Krishna's enjoyment. And in this way, the devotees have perfect and beautiful and ever-increasing loving exchanges with Krishna. This characterizes their entire life and soul. So, and in this way, Vrindavan is immersed in transcendental loving friendship. In the 10th canto, chapter 13, verse 60, we see a line where Lord Brahma describes Vrindavan as Mitrani va jita vasa. He says that friendship and harmony pervades the transcendental abode of Sri Vṛndāvana Dham. So, we should hear these descriptions and absorb our mind in these descriptions. And we should develop a desire to go there, to the transcendental abode of Sri Vṛndāvana Dham. And then we can live in a loving relationship with the sweetest of boys, Krishna. So wouldn't we all like to do that? Yes. The more that we can hear about these descriptions, then we can develop a heartfelt longing for this laulyam. This laulyam is the prerequisite for being able to go to Sri Vṛndāvana Dham. Actually, in a technical sense, you can say laulyam is the prerequisite for beginning to develop one's true loving relationship with Krishna in one of the 5 or particularly 4 transcendental rasas. So, and we develop this laulyam by purifying ourselves through the process of sadhana bhakti, through practicing the rules and regulations, and also by regularly absorbing our mind and hearing these descriptions of Sri Vṛndāvana Dham, hearing the descriptions of the service rendered by the various residents of Vrindavan and the loving relationships that arise from these loving exchanges. A prime example of this is later in the Venu Gita, in the 21st chapter of the 10th canto, we hear mention of an aboriginal girl who finds kumkum that came from Krishna's feet within the grass of Vrindavan, and she becomes absorbed in loving sentiments towards Krishna. This is actually a perfect example of the development of one's loving relationship with Krishna if you explore deeper into the commentaries by our previous acharyas on that particular verse of the Gopi Gita. So yes, we can purify our mind and purify our heart and see an alternative to our modern degraded demonic lifestyle by absorbing our minds in these topics of Krishna in Sri Vṛndāvana Dham. And thus we can become inspired to go beyond the limitations and disgustingness of our modern society, and we can then inspire others also to overcome these and become situated in loving service to Krishna. But if we don't have attraction ourselves, then it's not very effective to try to imbue attraction to Krishna in others. So we have to cultivate attraction in ourselves, find advanced devotees, or ideally pure devotees, whose association we can get, from whom we can hear about Krishna's qualities and pastimes. And then once we are established in this, or to the degree we're established in this, then we can share that with others. Okay, any questions or comments or complaints?
found it interesting the point that you raised where like even just being vegetarian, even not saying anything, like there are many people that like will get offended just by that presence. Yesterday when we were speaking about dharma and speaking about the principles, I was sharing my experience with sobriety, where like when my co-workers will hear and learn that I'm sober, like I don't take nicotine or caffeine or alcohol or whatever, like they naturally respect that. Like, oh, you're better than me, you know, like that's very honorable. So it's like there's a natural instinct that like it's good for you, but people just don't have the willpower to engage in that kind of behavior. And vegetarianism, it's a similar kind of thing with different reaction, but it's like if you're amongst meat eaters and you know it's learned that you're vegetarian, just the mood shifts a little bit. It's very palpable, you know, everyone experiences. It's like something like there's like a thought or feeling of like, oh, you know, like guilt, embarrassment, something like that. And I always find that so fascinating because it points to like there's some natural instinct there. You know, like if it was meat, if meat eating was like okay and fine, and there's like nothing about it, then there wouldn't be that reaction.
Especially with ordering at restaurants.
Yeah, but the fact that people have a reaction to that, sometimes anger and like that, or sometimes guilt, or like it's pointing to an unnatural condition that we find ourselves in that we forget about until maybe some moment like that reminds us that like, oh wait, how am I living my life? That's not normal if I give it a little bit of thought. So I was thinking about that.
Yeah. But the last thing people want in modern society is to look at themselves and evaluate how they're not living a proper life.
And yes, she was saying something.
It's just funny that, like, if you say, you know, I don't eat carrots or apples, it's like, okay, cool, but even with garlic and onion, like, it's not, oh, you eat garlic and onion. I had a question about, there's no more comments about this. I had a question, Nadar and I were actually debating this a few days ago, and it was your sort of first point in the class that, his claim was that people have a higher quality of life now than before. And I had some points, but I don't know, I wonder, because that's kind of what you started the class with. Yeah, I just want to hear more about that.
Well, in modern society, people are full of all kinds of anxieties constantly. That's the first form of distress. People are full of all kinds of mental anxieties, mental troubles. They're afflicted by so many physical troubles, so much pollution, living an unnatural lifestyle. You know, people are very sedentary, and so we see practically people deal with so many health problems due to their sedentary lifestyle, whether that's overly gaining weight, having damage to different parts of their body due to their underutilizing the parts of their body. Practically also, we can see that there's so much strife going on in the world. I think that if you were to compare modern battlefields, modern situation of war to the past, you know, I kind of have a little bit of a fascination with how war was conducted in the past. And just because of the fact of not having firearms, for instance, the nature of battle was much different in the past. The quantity of casualties was much lower, and it also required like a person-to-person exchange in battle, which provided opportunities for surrender. It provided opportunities for compassion amongst the individuals in the battle, and also it made it so that you didn't just have, you know, 18-year-olds who don't have economic prosperity in their future just being thrown out into the battlefield, as we see in modern America. These military recruiters go to high schools. I remember when I was in high school seeing military recruiters inside the school. They were allowed inside the school to tow these children off to kill each other. Yes, and then also, in terms of length of lifetime, people live the same lifespan nowadays as they did a couple thousand years ago. It's not that people have a longer life. People's relationships are fragmented, families are fragmented, and practically there's no or very little scope for finding common ground with other human beings, even within one's own community. So for all those reasons, I would strongly argue that in modern society there is not a higher quality of life. We have more choices, but those choices don't give us the happiness that we think they do. Yes.
I have a reflection. So earlier I grew up like eating meat, and I would also go and to buy it, I would see all sorts of things. And even though I was a kid, I felt no remorse or compassion. And I remember some of my cousins or friends were vegetarians, and I was the person who was often being sarcastic with them about their food choices and would make faces or have comments pass every time we went out to eat. But now that I'm vegetarian and it happened, I don't know how it happened, but it happened. And then I think now when I go out and I am in their place, and but recently I think my roommate, she's also vegetarian, but she keeps watching these food videos where I don't know, where they're trying to cook something that is not vegetarian. Like the other day they were trying to boil a crab or something, and I think I just couldn't take it anymore, and it hurt me so much that I went to my room and I was thinking about it. And your point about like cleanliness, about social media and what we consume and what we eat and what we see, I think that resonated a lot with me.
Thank you.
Why does she watch the videos if she's vegetarian?
Right?
Why does she watch the videos if she's vegetarian?
That's my whole point. I don't get it.
Well,
and every time they're cooking something, she's like, nice. And I'm like, but aren't you vegetarian? Like, you haven't eaten any of this.
well, like Urmila Devidasi was pointing out on Thursday, one of the rasas is the ghastly rasa. So maybe there's some like twisted like kind of ghastliness enjoyment, or like something like that.
So for us, we are vegetarian out of compassion and out of a spiritual reason, right? We have both sides, like out of compassion and out of a spiritual reasons, and that's why we are vegetarian and we promote vegetarianism. And I have a coworker like just because of dietary preference or maybe love a little bit, like they were vegetarian for like 10 years and then she got pregnant and then went to the doctor, and the doctor is like, eat meat for your baby, and like that's like a love binding reason. And then she's like, oh, if it's for my baby, how could I not like feed my baby? So she started eating meat again. So because they don't have this spiritual also like add up on the compassion part, and they lack that education from the spiritual side as well. So I think if it's only for out of compassion, then that can be changed, like depending on, oh yeah, they are slaughtered in a good way, they are halal meat, like they are killed in a nice way.
Even then, the halal slaughtering is not in a nice way. I've seen videos of it.
Yes, and I think that's one thing. And then I realized recently, and then another thing is also my coworker. She was a pescatarian. She would not eat meat, but seafoods only. And she had to leave that because of her environment, like housing environment, everybody would eat meat, and she doesn't have that financial or like that ability where she can afford extra kitchen, like where she can cook her own thing. So everybody would eat meat, and then like kitchen is full of meat, and like she had to let go of that her pescatarian diet, and also like I feel like the spiritual, not tying our habits to spirituality, and then not having that association of devotee or the like same group of friends who have same reason why they are vegetarian, just to push each other every time. Those thing affects as well.
Yeah, those are fair points. But I think also that if someone is actually determined and motivated by these principles, then they can, make it work. Like even when I was a kid, I wanted to be a vegetarian from a very young age, even before I heard anything about what such a thing as a vegetarian. But my parents, very much enjoy eating like steak and stuff like that. And so when I would be at school, I would get whatever the vegetarian thing was. And when they would cook, I would avoid eating much or any of the meat. And then once I, had my own job, or once I could get a job when I was 16, then, I became vegetarian. And so yeah, I think if someone is determined, then they can find a way to like go in that direction. And maybe one wouldn't be able to perfectly do it right away, but if someone has the motivation that they want to at least try their best, then Kṛṣṇa can open up opportunities in that regard. On the other hand, if someone is legitimately in a position where they have no other choice, then it is considered acceptable that someone eats meat as long as they're in that situation. Like, people like nomads in the mountains of Tibet where they like can't grow anything. One could say that it's reasonable for them to eat meat if that's the only thing that's available. But then one could also say that, well, those people could change their situation and maybe not live in the mountains of Tibet. So yeah, there's like different levels of consideration in it, but the human form of life gives us the most opportunity to consider these higher principles and to shape our life according to higher principles. So if we choose not to, when the opportunity is there, then we can't blame anyone else. But if the opportunity isn't there, then we can only do the best that we can. Anything else? Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakti Vṛnda ki jai.